Hey, grades. In the last section of this unit, and we're starting to use brackets now, so using almost all of BEDMAS, not the exponents part yet. So modeling and solving two-step equations again. So there's only two steps still, really, but it's in the form A multiplied by X plus B, which is in brackets. So one number multiplied by this group. So when we have brackets, that sort of groups something together as into one thing. So again, we're just going to get into some examples just so that we can understand this a bit better. So let's model this again with our teeter-totter. Here we go. There we go. So we're going to solve these by modeling the equation. So on the left side, we have 2 times by g plus 4. Or we can say we have two groups of g plus 4. So for A, if I was going to draw my teeter-totter, on the one side, I have two groups of g plus 4. So g, I could show as my box. And I have 4 beside it, so I'm just going to do 4 counters, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 1 g plus 4, but I have 2 of them, so I'd have my other g plus 4. Okay, so here I have my 2 g's and my 2 plus 4's. So in total, this is actually the same as 2g plus 8 is what 2 times by g plus 4 is. So I have 2 g's and I have 2 4's. So I have to take that 2 out front and I actually have to multiply both things inside the brackets by that. We call that the distributive property because we distribute that 2 into both parts. Okay, on the other side, I just have negative 8. So I'm going to show 8 negatives with my negative integer shifts. Okay, so if I wanted to solve what just g was equal to, I would want to find just g on my left side of my teeter-totter here. And so I'm going to have to get rid of all of these positives, these 8 positives. Now to get rid of positives with integer chips, you can add negatives. So if I put in 8 negatives, that would get rid of them. So if I had negative 8 on this side, this adding 8 negatives is like minusing 8 or having 8 negatives. These cancel out. But to keep my teeter-totter balanced, I have to put another negative 8 on this side, because since I did it on my left side, I do it on my right side, so I'll do another negative 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now, if I have negative 8 minus 8, in total I have negative 16. Okay, so these get canceled out, so all of my integer chips on this side are gone, which is good, because I only want a variable left. And on this side, I'm left with negative 16. Okay. Now, I have 2g on this side. I only want to find out what 1g is equal to. Well, if I get rid of half or divide it by 2 and divide this by 2 as well, so get rid of half of it, get rid of half of it on this side, I can see that g is equal to those negative 8 integer chips. Okay. So I use my distributive property. So let's check. Let's imagine that in our equation we put negative 8 in here first. So if we wanted to double check, we'd have to do what is in brackets first. So now that we're not solving for a variable, we're just solving the equation. We follow BEDMAS. We follow order of operations. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4. 2 times by, if this is negative 4 in the brackets, 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. So the left side is negative 8, the right side is negative 8. So that is the right solution. Okay, so you just have to deal with, the fact that there's these brackets, and we can see that this 2 actually means that there's 2 g's and that there's 2 4's. So again, with B, let's demonstrate this one with a quick teeter-totter. and I have 3 groups of r minus 2. So if I have r and then 2 negatives, I can show with minus 2. But I have 3 groups of that because it's 3 times by r minus 2. So another r, 2 negatives. On the right side, all I have is 3 positives. So somehow, these 3 r's and then these in total 6 negatives adds up to just 3 positives. So, how can I solve this? Well, last time I took away the integer chips on the left side first. But what else we could actually do is, since we have 3 groups on this side and 3 groups on this side, or 3 things on the left side as well, I could actually divide both sides by 3. So if I divide this side by 3, divide this side by 3, I'm only going to have 1 out of those 3 left. So I get rid of these 3. That would leave me with just r and 2 negatives. And if I get rid of 2 out of the 3 on this side, that leaves me with just 1 positive. Okay, so a little bit of a different way, but instead of dealing with just all the integer chips, what I did is I divided this side by 3, and I divided this side by 3. Now when I divide the left side by 3, these 2 3's cancel out. And then all that I'm left with is what's in my brackets, which is r minus 2. On my right side, I'm left with 1. So now I want to get what r is equal to. Well, all I have to do is get rid of these 2 negatives. So I add 2 positives and add 2 positives. These cancel out, and I'm left with r is equal to 3. If you put r is 3 in here, does that make sense? Well, if it's 3 minus 2, that is equal to 1. 3 times by 1 is equal to 3, so that is correct. Okay, so sort of 2 different ways that you can solve it. You can either solve it by, after you do the distributive property, you then get rid of the number, the value, the constant there, or you can divide first without doing the distributive property. Okay, so 2 ways. We'll do a couple more examples. So again, the distributive property states that a times by b plus c is the same as a times b plus a times c. So a times b and a times c. That's the distributive property. Let's use that first to solve a here. So with a, the group is x minus 3, and I have negative 2 of those, but I'm just going to take this negative 2, and I'm going to multiply it by each of these values. So negative 2 times by x gives me negative 2x. And then I have negative 2 times by 3. So this minus sign, though, in front of it can actually make it be like a negative 3 if you want. Otherwise, let's just pretend we just multiply 3. Negative 2 times by 3, so we would be minusing negative 2 times 3, which is negative 6, minus negative 6. But it'd be, since it was minus negative 6, that's the same as adding a positive, because we can keep, change. So this would be the same as 2x plus 6. We can also see, if we just see this as negative 2 times by negative 3, negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Okay, so when we distribute those in, this is what we get, and that is equal to 12. So now I have gotten rid of the back brackets after I've used the distributive property. So now I can just go along. I'm first going to get rid of the addition and subtraction. So this cancels out first. I minus 6 on both sides, though, so that I can keep it balanced. So I'm left with negative 2x on the left, and then 12 minus 6 is equal to 6. And then I'm going to want to divide x by negative 2, since it's being multiplied by negative 2. So I do the opposite thing. I do that on both sides, divide by negative 2. The negative 2's cancel out, and I'm left with x is equal to 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. Okay, there's my answer. And then you could put it back in to double check. You'd always want to put that back in as x and see if the left side equals the right side. Okay? I'm not going to do it right now just because I don't want this video to be as long as my last one. So b is negative 20 is equal to 5 times by 3 plus p in the brackets. So I could use my distributive property and multiply the 5 by what's in the brackets, or if I just do the opposite order of operations, that means that usually what we do in brackets is first, but now that we're solving for a variable, we do it last. So since what's in brackets is being multiplied by 5, I can just divide this whole thing by 5. And I do that on both sides. Since I divided everything on both sides by 5, I'm allowed to do that. And so the 5's cancel out. They're gone. Negative 20 divided by 5 is equal to a negative 4. And on the right side, I'm left with just 3 plus p. And since there's no coefficient out front, the 5's gone, we don't need those brackets there anymore. I want to get what just p is equal to. It has this positive 3 with it, so I'm going to do minus 3 to get rid of that positive 3, and minus 3. These 3's cancel out. So on my left side, negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7. On my right side, I have p. So there's my answer. And I can double check, put that back in. So if p was negative 7 instead, negative 7 plus 3, or 3 plus negative 7, is negative 4. And then if what is in the brackets there was negative 4 times by 5, negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. So that is the correct answer. Okay, so two ways you can do it with brackets. Either use the distributive property and multiply your coefficient there into the brackets by both parts, or just divide first. Okay, word problem. A flower garden is in the shape of a rectangle. The length of the garden is 2 meters longer than the length of the shed beside it. So here's the shed. It's an unknown length, so they said S is the length of the shed, and the length of the garden is 2 meters longer than that, so here's the 2 meters longer than the length of the shed. And the width of the garden is 4 meters, so here's the width of the garden, 4 meters. If the area of the garden is 20 meters squared, they have that written there, what is the length of the shed? So we're trying to find this variable S. So we know that the area of a rectangle is equal to length times by width. Okay, well in this case, we know that the area is 20. We know that the length is S plus 2. And we know that the width is 4. Okay, so now I just wrote S plus 2 times by 4. This is actually, the way I wrote it is sort of wrong, because what happens when you look at it like this is that it makes it look like we're just multiplying the 2 by 4, so it's just S plus 8. But that's not correct. I'm actually, what the whole length is, I am having to multiply that by the width. So it's actually S plus 2 in brackets times by 4. So we actually have 4 times by S plus 2. So we could actually write this as 20 is equal to 4 times by S plus 2. Okay, because 4 is the width, S plus 2 is the length. You have to multiply the whole length, not just the plus 2 by 4, or not just the S by 4, but the whole thing. So since it's one group, that length, so we have to put it in brackets. Okay, and now I can solve. I just have the one variable. Now I can solve for S. I could use the distributive property, or I could divide first. In this case, 20 is divisible by 4, so I can divide first. So I can go divide by 4 and divide by 4. The 4's cancel out. So now on the left side, 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 is equal to, on the right side, all I have is S plus 2. I need to take away 2 from S since it's S plus 2. I do the opposite on both sides. Subtract 2, and then 5 minus 2 is 3, so that's all I'm left with on the left. These canceled out, and so I'm just left with S on the right. So 3 is equal to S, which is the length of the shed. Okay, so does that make sense to have the length of the shed be 3? Well, if this was 3, this whole length would be 5. 5 times 4 is 20. The area is 20 meters squared. So yeah, that has to be the length of the shed. Okay. Yeah, so just again, if something comes in a group, so like this length of this rectangle, that is one thing. And so it has to be put together with some brackets around the S plus 2 when you put it in the equation. If you didn't have those brackets, you'd only end up multiplying the 2 by 4, or if you had it width times length, it'd be just the S by 4. Okay? So brackets are pretty important. Okay, one more word problem. Kai is making a square quilt with a 4 centimeter wide border around it. She wants the completed quilt to have a perimeter of 600 centimeters. What must the dimensions of Kai's quilt be before she adds the border? Okay, sort of confusing. Sometimes you get these word problems, and it's very helpful often, especially in these, like looking at dimensions of things, to draw a diagram. Okay, so she's making a square quilt. So let's draw a square, because it's going to be a square quilt. And she wants to have a 4 centimeter wide border around it. Okay, so there's going to be a border going around it. And that is 4 centimeters wide. Okay? She wants the completed quilt to have a perimeter of 600 centimeters. So the total perimeter has to be 600 centimeters. And since it's a square, the perimeter is equal to 4 times by the side length. Since there's 4 side lengths that are all the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, the perimeter is equal to 4 times by the side length. That's an S, not a 5. Okay? So, what must the dimensions of Kai's quilt be before she adds the border? So essentially, if this outside is going to have a perimeter of 600, what must this inside side length be? Okay? Well, let's look at the outside. If the outside is a perimeter of 600 centimeters, so the perimeter, I'm going to replace P here with 600 centimeters. And that's 4 times the side length. What is the side length of this outside? Well, we don't know S, the side length of the inside here, but we do know the outside is S plus, since the width everywhere is 4, there's going to be 4 here and 4 here. 4 plus 4 is 8, so it's going to be S plus 8 is the side length. So this side length is actually S plus 8, and there's going to be 4 of those for this outside. Okay, so we've given this inside dimension the variable S because we don't know it, but we know that the outside here is always going to be S plus the 8 because it's 4 centimeters on either side. Okay, hopefully this is making sense. So the total outside perimeter, the one outside side, would be S plus 8. Since they're all S plus 8, S plus 8, S plus 8, we have 4 groups of them. So we can just say 4 times by, fix that, 4 times by S plus 8 in brackets. So now here we have our equation, which we can solve. So why don't we do, well, it'll definitely be a lot easier to divide first. So let's do that. Okay, so we got, we're going to divide this side by 4, and we're going to divide this side by 4. So the 4's cancel out. 600 divided by 4, that is equal to, well, 600 divided by 2 would be 300. Divided by 2 again is 150. You can use your calculator on this unit if you need to for questions. So it's going to be 150 centimeters is equal to S plus 8. And then we just have the S here, and we want to subtract 8 on both sides, subtract 8. And so we get 142 centimeters is equal to the side length of her quilt before she adds the border. So if she wants the total thing to have a 600 centimeter perimeter, she would need to make her initial quilt, each side length, be 142 centimeters. Okay? So hopefully it's not too confusing. Maybe just watch through it a couple times. Otherwise, if you need help, I will be available on the Google Meet. And that is it. Grade 8s. I'll talk to you later.